In order for you not to get completely squashed financially, there are 11 things that you can do in order to make sure you come out of the other end of this recession with your wealth intact and possibly even still in a better place than you are now. The difference between people who drown during the recession and people who thrive are the ones that make consistently good choices before, during, and after this period of economic hardship. So today I want to give you guys 11 pointers from people who have already been through this before. You know, people that have gone through the 2008 crash, people that have gone through the dot-com bubble, even people that went through Black Monday back in 1987, okay? And I'm not going to sit here and say that all of these things we're about to go over are going to work for everybody every single time, but it's all tried and true advice that if you follow most of it, you should be able to come out of the other end of this thing relatively unscathed compared to most people who never saw it coming. So the first thing is, if you have a 401k or a brokerage account or any other type of stock market account, retirement accounts, and you're invested in the market, right? One thing that somebody who's been through a lot of these ups and downs said that they're going to be doing, and a lot of people in this position should be doing as well, is staying invested no matter what. Not panic selling, not taking your money out, because when you take your money out, you know, you could miss some of the best days on the market when it comes to the rebounds, and that can seriously affect your long-term returns, how much money you end up with in the end. Instead, you should be focusing on your spending, your savings, and managing your emotions during this tough time, because it can be tempting to go ahead and just pull that money out, guys, because you see your portfolio tanking, 10% in 1 week. It seems like it's time to panic, right? But by doing that, you could really be hurting yourself in the long run. The next thing you can do also applies that if you're invested in the markets is, rather than being greedy during this time frame, maybe it's time to pull back and be a little more conservative in your portfolio. If that means you're only going to be getting gains of 4 to 6% over the next couple of years, you should be happy with that, because it means you're not losing money. A lot of people want to shoot for the moon when it comes to being invested, and they want to see that 10, 12, 15% return year over year. And a lot of people got hooked on that high effect of having your portfolio go up 20% or more in 1 year, which is just not normal or very realistic for that to continue happening. So the next tip really is to just get realistic with what you can realistically expect over the next couple of years, now that things aren't so good, now that the market is losing, now that we have tariffs, now that a lot of the world is in a recession, including us. Now is the time to conserve what you have, not be shooting for the moon. This third thing I actually really like, because it's something that benefits a lot of people, including small business owners and people that live and work in your community. And what it is buy local, don't buy corporate. Meaning that when you visit your local businesses, go to the local hardware store if you need to buy a hammer or some electrical tape or some wire. Don't go to Home Depot. Don't give the business to the big guys, right? Instead of going to McDonald's for a burger, go to your local diner for the burger instead. Like, these are small little changes you can do. Like, if you're going to go out and spend the money anyways, help your local community survive these tough times rather than corporate America, because those guys are going to be fine no matter what. It's the little guy that needs help during this time frame. A lot of the reason that our country is in so much trouble, and the reason why Trump wants to impose these tariffs, is to bring a lot of business and manufacturing back to the United States, right? Well, why was all this exported to begin with? Because other countries could undercut us and make things a lot cheaper than people could make it for here. And Americans were like, okay, well, we just want to pay the lowest amount that we can for whatever. So let's just pay the lowest amount. And who cares if we lose all of our factory jobs here? Well, look where that ended us up. Not in a very good place. So maybe it's time to start learning from past mistakes and start helping out our local communities and businesses and turning our backs on the big guys. Even if you're planning on traveling, guys, travel domestically. If you had an international trip planned, travel domestically instead. You're giving those tourism and tax dollars to another state or city right here in the United States rather than bringing that money overseas and giving it to a foreign country. And right now, we need to do everything we can to help ourselves, you know? And likely it's gonna save you money. It's gonna be cheaper a lot of times to travel domestically than internationally. I mean, yeah, a lot of times you're gonna pay more for an international flight, but then a lot of foreign countries, once you get there, it's a lot cheaper than the US. So you kind of have to weigh your options there. But still, it goes back to the notion of let's support our own people first. Let's face it, we all use the internet these days, and the problem is every time you want to go onto a website or use a new service or app, you always have to agree to those service terms and conditions. And if you don't agree, you don't get to use that website, app, or whatever. Well, that's why today this video is sponsored by Delete Me, because Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that will remove your personal information that's being sold online. And Delete Me's privacy experts remove you from hundreds of data brokers all year long. A lot of these companies are collecting your information, like your name, your address, your marital status, your past addresses, different things about you, which they then can turn around and sell themselves, or they turn it over to data brokers who sell that information for a profit. So if you're somebody who is tired of being forced to share all of your personal information with these faceless companies online, make sure you sign up for Delete Me and get 20% off your Delete Me subscription by joining today using my link down below at joindeleteme.com/boardinarrow, or use the QR code on the screen. The next thing you can do is you can cut back on expenses. This is referring to things like unnecessary or unneeded subscription services. You have 3 streaming services for your TV, cut it down to 1. You have an expensive cell phone bill, give them a call and see if you can get it lowered. If you can't, switch carriers. You can get, cell phone plans as low as like $20 a month, unlimited these days. There's no reason to be paying $100 a month to Verizon or AT&T. Same thing goes for your internet bill. See how you can cut back on your electric bill. You'd be surprised at how much money you can actually save if you just take a look at all of those recurring monthly expenses that you have and see what can be axed completely and see what can be reduced. And this is going to be more important for people who are already struggling to stay afloat right now, because when things get tougher, as we get deeper into this recession, and it will get tougher, that extra $200 a month that you saved on those subscriptions and not paying as much for internet or TV or the cell phone could make the difference between whether or not you can make your car payment or whether or not you can make your electric bill that month. Things that actually need to get paid. Now, this next tip is really great if you're somebody who finds yourself in an unfortunate position where you lose your job during this recession. A lot of people are already going through this one right now. So what's the best thing you can do if this happens to you? Number one, you can continue honing in and brushing up on your skills and making sure that you are very good at what you do. But then once you lose your job, you need to get in touch with everybody you know who works at a similar job that you're doing, or get in touch with people who work at a job doing something that you would like to do with your skills. And you cannot lose belief in yourself that you have what it takes to get hired again. You can't lose belief in yourself and your skill level, because it can be demoralizing when you lose a job suddenly and you have a family to feed and you're basically your entire family's financial support system. It can be a mental blow in so many different ways. So what you really need to do is you need to keep your head up, and you need to double down on trying to get a job that's just as good, if not even better, than the one you had before. And the more that you believe that you're able to do it, and the more that you believe you're qualified and you see those opportunities, then the higher chance you're going to be the one who gets hired. Now, this next one that you can do kind of circles back to cutting back, but in a different way. And this person's advice is eat like a peasant, meaning that you buy low-cost ingredients for food, things like rice and beans, things like marinara sauce and pasta, and lower price cuts of meat, different things that you can buy that are a lot cheaper than what you might be used to, and might take a little more effort to cook in order for it to be as good as what you're used to eating. But it's an easy way to cut down on the grocery bill especially now with how much grocery prices have gone up. This next one is one that I'm guaranteeing most people do not do, and that is track your daily spending. This person says if you can understand where every dollar you're spending is going on a daily basis, that's going to give you the largest insight into what can be cut back and what is essential in your budget. And oftentimes, too many people don't even have a budget, have no idea what they're spending each month, because it's easy to just throw things on the credit card and have no clue, right? And that might be fine if you have a high income and you make more than enough and you're having no trouble saving money. But if you're somebody who's living on the edge and living kind of paycheck to paycheck, this is something crucial that you need to be doing right now before things get even worse than they are now. The next thing is to evaluate your shopping habits. Like, for example, here's an interesting story that I can tell you that my grandfather used to do, and my mom used to do this. I don't know if she still does it, but it went something like this. The Sunday paper would come out, and they have all the flyers in there, all the ads for all the grocery stores and all the other stores too, but we're talking about grocery shopping here. And my grandfather in particular would spend over an hour going through those ads, finding out what's on sale at different grocery stores, clipping coupons, and have to go to like 4 or 5 different grocery stores in order to get the best deals on, everything, and spend half the day or more grocery shopping, And back then, that probably was okay because the cost of living was a lot lower. It was kind of like a hobby for him. He probably really didn't need to save the money, to be honest. But people who are doing this now need to look at it realistically. Like, there's nothing wrong with getting a deal or clipping coupons to save money, guys. But you got to think about it like this. Am I going to have to drive, 30 or 40 minutes to this other grocery store in order to save $5 on a bag of potatoes or something like that? Because if that's what you're sacrificing a ton of time, the cost of gas these days, everything else involved of making that happen might not be worth the effort. Now, sure, if all of the stores are right next to each other within 5 minutes away, knock yourself out. We just got to evaluate, what are you doing to save money, and is it really worth it? Is it worth saving 10 or 15 bucks on groceries if you got to spend an extra $20 on gas? This person has several different tips in one here, which I like all of them. They say things like, make extra food so you have leftovers for lunch the next day. You don't have to eat out for lunch if you're going to work. Pay down debt now while you still have a job. That is huge. Do not buy more stuff, especially anything you don't need right now. Any type of discretionary purchase should be going on the back burner. Make do with what you have or what you can even borrow from neighbors. And the more friendships you build with your neighbors and the more community you have locally, if something happens to one household, everybody else can kind of come together and help them get through it. And they can come together and help you get through something if you're going through something. So kind of building a sense of community right now and having people you can rely on, having a support system is invaluable in recessionary times. Basically, stop consuming and start saving is the plan of attack here. Going back to the job situation, if you are laid off, be prepared to be laid off right now. Look how many people are losing jobs, guys. I did a video last week showing you that in the month of March, there was 275,000 jobs lost in the United States in just 1 month, which is by far the highest, only excluding a couple of months during the pandemic, going back the last 10 years. So that is tremendous. So your chances of losing a job right now are extremely high compared to what it was just a couple of years ago. So be ready for it. And if it happens, file for unemployment immediately, because it takes time to start receiving benefits. You're not going to get it right away. And some employers will lie to you and say that you're not eligible to collect unemployment until your severance package is spent. However, that's not true, and you can still file for unemployment right away, because the last thing they want you to do is to file because they have to pay for it. This person says that because they filed for unemployment right away, those unemployment checks help them get back on their feet during the 2008 housing crash, and they could find part-time work as a freelancer after having some extra money saved up from the unemployment. And then once things improve for them, they were able to start putting money away in an emergency fund once again in order to keep their family afloat for a year. So having that extra little money come in for unemployment, even though it's not a lot, can be very beneficial if you just lost a job. And you got to be ready for it, guys. You don't know when it's going to happen. Everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them, right? But you just never know. And the last piece of advice for being able to stay afloat during this recession is to just find ways to be more resilient. Find ways to improve your skills. It costs $100 to take your car in for the oil change. Learn how to change the oil filter and the air filter yourself on the car. It's not that hard, guys. If you have a driveway and a garage and a few simple tools, you can do it. It's not really that difficult to do. And same goes for a lot of other things that you might be paying for right now. Maybe you're paying for a lawn maintenance person, a landscaper, or you're paying for other things that could be saving you a lot of money right now, that if you just spent a couple hours on YouTube researching how to do these things yourself, especially if you have the extra time, if you are somebody who just got laid off or has their hours cut at work, there's really no excuse not to put the extra time into learning some of these things, because all it's going to do is benefit you and save you money during hard times. Now, going back to one of the points I had in how to survive this recession, I want to talk a little bit about big business versus small business and the tariffs and everything like that, and how different businesses are being affected. Because, for example, these large retailers, take Walmart for example, they are basically the largest retailer in the world, and they have a lot of bargaining power to try to reduce prices as much as possible directly from the supplier, and also try to get them to eat some of these tariffs so they can have minimal price increases at their stores for their customers, which is an advantage over any other type of small business that needs to import anything that's subject to a tariff right now. So smaller businesses are looking at taking a different approach to try and basically save money right now and help their business. One of the things that they're looking at doing is shrinking the store's selection of different items that are offered, especially less popular items that don't sell as well, or items that are subject to larger tariffs, as well as freezing hiring. People are pausing advertising, and they're trying to develop products of their own. And basically small businesses are entering a period of survival mode and more like preservation mode, trying to hang on to what they have and maintain what they have rather than try to grow. Because most businesses are always trying to grow and expand, but now is not the time for that if you're a small business, most likely. And a lot of small business owners are starting to have to operate like households running on a budget. What is a need versus a want? What do I need to have for my business versus something that would be nice to have for my business? This is the operating mode a lot of businesses are turning to right now. And I wanted to bring this up because this is especially important now that a lot of these businesses are getting hit by tariffs, and if you don't support your local business, then they might no longer be available to you. And the more that local businesses go under and corporate America comes in and absorbs that market share, then the more of a disadvantage we'll all be at in the end. Because when there's no competition left, then a business has something called a monopoly, and they can do whatever they want with prices and availability and selection, and you got nothing to say about it because there's no other competition there to say otherwise. Also, there's some accounts in this story of business owners here in the United States that have attempted to try and manufacture some of their products here in the United States, but keep coming up with roadblocks that get in the way. Like, for example, even if you want to manufacture something here in the US, there's a good chance that you're going to have to import a lot of the raw materials, which means it's going to be subject to the tariff. Then you have to pay much more in labor fees here, and there's a lot more red tape in general to get a factory going here. So the chances that the tariffs are really going to bring a lot of manufacturing back here to the United States, I believe, is the biggest mistake that this administration is making. But I don't want to knock it too much in the beginning because we will see, right? We don't know that yet. But as of right now, these are the roadblocks that local business owners are running into. And then, for example, even if there is a possibility to make something here in the United States, usually that item is now going to cost 3 to 4 times more money in order for it to be manufactured here. And going back to what I was saying, people want cheap stuff, right? Everybody's looking for a bargain. Everybody wants to save the most amount of money, and probably especially now, more than ever, with how tough things are getting out there, you can't expect somebody looking to cut back on their budget and go against everything we just talked about and pay 4 times more for the same item just because it was made in the United States, right? But this is the problem. We have conditioned ourselves in this country to living off of all of this cheap crap that gets imported here and not being able to fend for ourselves and making these things ourselves. And this is a huge handicap for our country now. And this applies to all sorts of things: toys, electronics, clothes, shoes, all this stuff we don't really make here anymore. Here's a great example of what I mean. Take work boots, for instance. One of these local business owners says that they sell work boots that are made in America that sell and retail for $400 a pair, whereas the imported version sells for half of that at about $200 a pair. And the problem is not everybody can afford a $400 work boot, especially if there's no difference in quality, right? That has to be the differentiator. If you're gonna pay more for something made in the United States, it better be worth the extra money that you're gonna spend. I always think about guitars when it comes to this, right? Because I always wanted to buy a Gibson Les Paul, which is a guitar made in the United States, was always regarded as like, you know, the holy grail for a guitar player. But I found out after many different guitar reviews and even playing a couple of Gibson Les Pauls myself that they're not really the best guitars in the world, even though they're made in the United States. And you can buy a guitar from LTD, which is made by ESP in countries like Indonesia or in Korea, with the same quality, if not even better in some cases, as the Gibson Les Paul, and for less than half the price. So that's the other problem we have in this country. Can we even be competitive on a quality scale when it comes to making goods or products that people want, right? Like me as the guitar player, I still have not bought that Gibson Les Paul because I just haven't thought it's been worth it, guys. I really haven't. And I've seen enough variations in those type of guitars that I would never buy one online. If I'm gonna spend, you know, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on a guitar, I need to play that guitar in person and get a feel for it before I drop the cash on it to make sure I really like it. But the point is that because small businesses across America are having such a hard time right now with the tariffs and trying to bring manufacturing back, if it's even possible, if it's even cost effective or not, the best thing you can do is at least try to support them right now. Now, obviously, if the business sucks and they're not worth supporting, then who cares? Let them go out of business, right? That's my motto with everything. I don't go places that I don't like, regardless of who owns it. But you get the idea. And the last thing I want to talk about is how Canada's economy is now in a recession as well, okay? Because they were already on rocky ground before the tariffs, and now with the tariffs, it's basically causing mass job losses in Canada, nowhere near to the scale we're seeing here in the US, but they're a much smaller country with a lot less people, so it's a lot for them. As of March of 2025, about 33,000 Canadians lost their job, which is the worst report in more than 3 years. So they are also seeing their job loss numbers just as bad as the US, relatively speaking, since the pandemic. So it's not going great over there. And on Monday this week, the Bank of Canada reported that businesses and households expect inflation to climb, and company executives there warned that they expect to pass on higher tariff-fueled costs to customers regardless to the hit of consumer demand. And this goes back to what I've been saying here on the channel. You know, a lot of these countries, they're doing retaliatory tariffs, you know. We put on a tariff, so they put on a tariff. Well, all it does is hurt them. That's why Canadians are going to be hurting from this just as much as us, if not even more, because the Canadians are the ones who are going to be paying those retaliatory tariffs, just like we're the ones paying the tariffs that Trump is imposing over here in the United States. So if you are somebody who's losing your job because of this, or somebody who can no longer afford something, regardless of which country you're in, and you're a country that recently imposed tariffs, well, thank your local president or leaders for that wonderful decision. And right now, 32% of Canadian companies are now planning for a recession in the next 12 months. And that's more than double the average of what it usually is, about 15% of businesses. Hiring is basically non-existent right now in most of Canada, so if you do lose a job, it's going to be very difficult to find a new one. Now, supposedly the Canadian government's going to be cutting about $7.8 billion in taxes in order to help offset some of the price increases from the tariffs, but still, that's probably just going to be a drop in the bucket when it comes to the real life consequences of what people are going to be paying. And it looks like Canada's auto industry is probably going to be hit the hardest by this because of the 25% tariffs that are now being imposed on imported vehicles. And last year, Canada imported about 1.3 million cars into the United States, and their auto industry employed about 54,000 people. So it's a very significant portion of their economy. The Canadian government's even considering offering cash buyouts to American car manufacturers to continue manufacturing their cars there to help stop the bleeding and to stop job losses. So things are getting rough out there, guys, pretty much no matter where you live right now. You know, the global economy is not doing too well, and the reality is it wasn't doing well before the tariffs, and this is probably just going to make it worse for basically everybody. So going back to the things we talked about at the beginning of this video, I hope you can implement a lot of them for your regular everyday life to help soften the blow during these hard times. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.